Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the first session of the Spring 2023 series of the Industry Leaders Talk Series, hosted by New York Institute of Technology's College of Engineering and Computing Sciences. My name is Babak Beheshti, Dean of the College. This series is co-hosted by our college as well as the IEEE Region 1. Our audience today is composed of professional members as well as student members from across the Northeastern United States, in addition to the College of Engineering's current students, alumni, faculty, staff, and a number of distinguished guests. I would like to thank the College of Engineering's Dean's Executive Advisory Board, particularly its chair, Dr. Robert DeFazio, who has been instrumental in organizing this series. Today's industry leader presentation is titled Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Computing, an Overview, Challenges, Opportunities, and Future Paths for Modern Businesses. The speaker is Ms. Virginia Gambale. Virginia Gambale, our alumni with the bachelor's degree from New York Tech, is a successful technology leader, investor, and experienced board director. As managing partner of Azimuth Partners, LLC, Ms. Gambale operates globally as an advisor and consultant, focused on the use of disruptive technologies, for example, cloud, AI, ML, VR, data analytics, and interactive B2B, and consumer digital platforms to assist in transforming or facilitating growth in both middle market and large operations. Ms. Gambale has served on over 20 public and private boards and is chair of lead director, and as chair, lead director, and committee chair roles, including JetBlue for 15 years, Motive, Piper Jaffray, WorkBrain, Synchronous Technologies, and IQ Financial as chair. Without any further ado, I will pass it on to Virginia. Virginia, please.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me and see me. You know, I'm a very mission-oriented person, and my mission is always fueled by my passions. So first of all, I'm really excited to see a lot of women in the audience today. I think when I was sitting on your side, I think a lot of times I was the only female. So it's really refreshing to see that. Why this topic today? I feel that as we think about all the new technologies that are emerging, the concept of various manifestations of cloud computing is essential. And what I see in many organizations today is that there are several problems. People are afraid of the cloud. People don't understand the cloud concept. They're feeling that their skills are not yet ready for such computing, or there's just, it's such a monolithic change when they're inside these large institutions with, you know, portfolios of hundreds and thousands of applications. Where do I begin? And what is the road and the path that I follow to get there? At the same time, we are all facing huge pressures globally with the need to continue to be relevant, to evolve, to be more efficient, to provide better services, to make sure that we are energy efficient, and we have to constantly continue to develop our skills. So that is why I chose this topic today. I thought that I would start out a little bit with my personal background, because I think it's important that you understand. I think one of the things my son said to me was, wow, Mom, it's so amazing. Whenever I talk to, you know, some of your work colleagues or your friends, they started out here and they ended up over here. And so everyone's path is different, and some have a very straight and narrow path, and some people have a very circuitous path. So I'll just give you a little thumbnail sketch of my background. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. I started out actually as a concert pianist. My passion and my love was the piano. I started a little later than most pianists who started 3 or 4, but I really tried to make up for lost time. My seminal moment was when I went to see one of my colleagues who was a cellist at Carnegie Hall give his debut. And I went backstage to say, Mark, your concert was amazing. Your life is set. And he looked at me and he said, Virginia, if you think that, you are definitely wrong. I live on Avenue A. The bathroom is down the hall and I eat brown rice 3 times a day. So if you think that that means that my life may be 180% different than it is today, you are wrong. So having won a scholarship to study in Fontainebleau in Paris, I declined. I always wanted to be independent. I grew up in a small town on Long Island named Bayville, went to Locust Valley High School, and all I wanted to do was see the world. And so to me, becoming independent and financially independent was a really important driver. And so I decided to leave music and move on. But yet, you know, what was I going to do? My brother was an economist at the Fed who started using computers to do his work. And he said, you know, you're kind of a left and right brain person. And I think you'd be amazing at computers because you're very analytical, but you're very creative as well. And he said, we need both in the field. So there, my parents said, well, we spent a fortune on your career, you know, your education so far. That's it. We cannot afford to pay any more. So if you want to go to school and do something else, you have to pay for it. So there, I got in a car and drove around to different schools. And of course, that was not too far away, was New York Tech. And I went to Stony Brook and I went to CW Post. I went to all these schools, Hofstra, wherever. It was New York Tech who sat down with me and said, I see you have all this music theory. That's really hard and very complex. It's like mathematics, yes? And I said, yes. And I see you were a stellar high school student. You got straight A's in math and science, and you took calculus. Maybe you want to take CLEP exams, college level efficiency exams, because I could put together a program for you where we would give you credit for your music theory and your music history and your mathematics background and science background in high school. If you take these challenge exams, we could get you graduated in 2 years. And I said, that's great. And then I can get a job and start working. And they said, absolutely. So that began my thinking about it. It just accelerated my ability. Who would have thought that a music student could actually graduate with a bachelor's degree in 2 years? But I did. And when I went in as a developer, to me, programming was so easy because if you practice 6 or 10 hours a day, writing a program was fun. And getting paid for taking vacation, that was a concept that I had never heard of. So I was able to apply, you know, my skills very quickly. And I always kept asking the next question, well, why are we making this program? And how does that fit into the bigger system? And so I moved from a developer to an architect, into management, into strategy. And then I became a global CIO in a Wall Street firm. And that's when I started to really open up. I traveled the world. I was the only female partner in an all-male partnership group when I was at Merrill Lynch and then at Bankers Trust and then at Deutsche Bank. I moved into the investment side because I always used early stage technology companies to get competitive advantage. And in those days, that was kind of rare to put a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure on an early stage company solution. And then from there, I became a partner because my companies that I would identify went public or were very successful. And I ended up late in life deciding, okay, well, last time I looked, you know, I'd like to have some kids. I got married. And I didn't have a lot of time. So, and my husband said, well, the last time I looked, you can't really do any of that stuff while you're, you know, on the internet. So you have to be around. So I decided to leave Deutsche Bank as a partner and then start my own business. And what I did know how to do as an investor was to sit on boards and to progress, help companies scale, help them with their financial plans, their strategy. And there began my journey. And so I created this life called the Portfolio Life. I've been doing this now for almost 18 years, where I give back to my industry. So for 16 years, I was a mentor at the Columbia University in the Masters in Technology Leadership. I founded Azimuth Partners. I would work with a couple of clients a year to help them grow. And then I would sit on boards. So I always sit on 4 public boards and then 2 or 3 private boards. So in this last couple of years, I reached the pinnacle of my board career. I am chair of a company called Nutanix, which is a $10 billion cloud computing company. And I often chair the Nom and Gov or Comp committee. And I don't know if you've ever flown on JetBlue, but having been a board director there for 15 years, I actually designed the Wi-Fi by using a colleague of mine who was the former founder of Qualcomm. We sat on a board together and he was streaming broadband to cornfields in the middle of the country. And I said, wow, if you can stream to farms in the middle of nowhere, can you stream to cockpits? And he was like, wow, I don't know, let's look at it. And it turns out we had to launch our own satellite, punch a hole in every airplane and put an antenna on top, and then put servers inside the plane. Well, it took me 3 years to convince the board to do that. And eventually I won. And it was one of my students at Columbia that actually was responsible for the project planning for launching the satellite in Kazakhstan. And so as a board director, you're able to also get very involved in your company's delivery of services, ideation, strategy, et cetera. So, and I managed to fit 2 children in there. They're twins, a boy and a girl. So that is the story of me. I think it helps give you a sense of anything is possible, no matter where you start out. So that's really important. So I hope this topic today is okay for you, but I find that when I talk to students a lot, they take for granted the cloud. It's like, well, yeah, it's the cloud, it's there, Well, where is the cloud and what are the manifestations of cloud? So I will tell you, about 10 years ago, I was walking to teach a class at Columbia, and I read in the paper. I read everything every morning. I wake up and I read everything. I read tech, rags. I read the FT. I read the Journal. I read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And I saw that Amazon launched this concept of AWS, that they were going to leverage their cloud computing platform to the outside world. I instantly had to change my talk immediately, because for so many years, Amazon was not profitable. But what they were doing was siphoning off millions of dollars and investing in their cloud-based platform, knowing they knew they were going to go public with it. And they were really the first cloud hyperscaler. There were other clouds, right? Salesforce, Netflix was a cloud-based system, but never did anyone really open up their capability, and it was AWS. So at that time, when they announced that, they were projecting that that market was maybe 1.5 billion. Well, here we are, less than 10 years later. They are at 20 billion and a quarter, so over 80 billion a year. And the entire industry of cloud computing is 544 billion today and growing. So when we say cloud, maybe you all know this, maybe you don't, but it is every day from the seat that I sit on. It's not, oh, are we going into AWS or Google or Azure? or, it's and. Everything is and now. So it's edge computing, it's in your data center on-prem. We're not just AWS, we're Google, we're Azure. We are SaaS platforms, and it is growing every day. So the concept of hybrid and multi-cloud has come along. For a while, multi-cloud was conceived of, okay, we're an institution and we have stacks. We have an Azure stack, and we have a Google stack, and we have an AWS stack, but the two did not intercommunicate, right? And so that was multi-cloud. Hybrid cloud, which was actually something that the founder of Nutanix had coined originally, like 6 years ago, was no, that's not how it's going to work. And we are going to interchange data. Applications are going to talk to one another across clouds. And it's really important that those of you who work in these organizations really start to bubble up the need for building interoperability among all these manifestations of cloud. And so it's not just on-prem, okay? It's not just cloud and data center. It's not just one cloud and another cloud. Or is it cloud to edge? Or is it cloud to edge and data center? It really is an ecosystem of all of these. And it's going to be up to all of you to figure out how to make that happen. So when we start to look at, I throw this slide in because I just don't know how many people are very well versed in some of the nomenclature. When we talk about hyperscalers, who are the hyperscalers? The hyperscalers are the big guys, right? The Azures, the Googles. Every day that's growing because many software service organizations are growing and putting their wares in the cloud. You have to be very careful because they're not really born in the cloud. They're kind of like retrofitted into the cloud, which has shortcomings to it as well. So that's why it's really important that we rethink and redo all of these applications, and not in like for like, but in a completely different model. Many institutions talk about, well, we've got, so much that is traditional data centers, but at the same time, people are building new applications and spinning them up with ease in various clouds, right? So if we look at the trend in terms of statistics over the last 6 years, the line you see growing is public cloud. Now, some companies will, develop in public cloud. As the application gets more mature and scales, they'll move it to on-prem, or they'll move it to an outsourced data center, which is like a cloud. But I don't think on-prem or these traditional systems are going to 100% go away so fast, but we have to create the momentum and we have to move forward. And if you think about the skill set, a company cannot afford each one of these hyperscalers. The language and all of the capability at AWS is very different than the language and capability at Google or Azure, right? There are some, Kubernetes platforms that help make it easier, but we cannot have just engineers that are just fluent in the AWS environment or just fluent in Google, because we have to be interoperable. So that's where you may hear the term of DevOps, where there's a group of people who can actually work in a facile way across all of these platforms. And there are companies that are coming out now that actually give you that layer to be able to interoperate with all of these. To me, each one of the hyperscalers and the emerging SaaS capability has their own strengths and weaknesses. No one is 100% identical. So we have to be able to understand the idiosyncrasies of those environments, extract the best. But if we have to shift and lift, we need to be able to do that because our business needs us to be able to do that. So again, why do I say all this? I say it because when you're in your organizations, you have to start asking questions and probing in a way that helps to move our industry forward. Because I can tell you that if we don't, and other countries do, we will be at a great disadvantage. And so ask questions about, well, our workloads, where are they going to reside for maximum flexibility? Our data, how are we going? Look at the largest area of worldwide enterprise infrastructure workloads is in the data category. And we want this data to be protected, obviously. We see this tremendous ransomware taking place right now. My companies always are freaked out, particularly boards that don't know anything about technology are like, oh my God. And I say, well, if you want to back up everything that you need to run your business, then and put it somewhere where you still have to make sure that you cleanse it and, run your simulations through to make sure there's nothing happening inside. That's the only way you can say, sorry, guys, I'm not going to pay your ransomware, because otherwise, and we may get to that point, right? And that's where some of these interesting models come into play, so that you've heard maybe terms like cold backup, hot, cold backup. You want to be able to, I hope we'll all get to a point where we can say no to the ransomware people. But if you just take a look at this chart, which is interesting, you will see that the largest growing areas in change is in data and also in the business applications and the digital services. So if you look at the trend, migrated apps on a percentage basis versus net new builds, it's really growing. Look at the leap between 21 and 22. It's quite significant. So we're on this train and it's moving, guys. And we need you all to help advance forward. So how does IT generally need to adapt to these needs? We know that on the business side, digital first strategies are more and more prevalent every single day. Innovation is key to survival. Security is a priority and it's everywhere. And there's increasing need for speed and ability to adapt to change. And so if you are working on projects within your classes and you have group projects, thinking about adaptability and agility, how can we continue to morph? To me, what helped me a lot was I would always bump everything up to a certain level of abstraction, to the point where I could see it at a higher level, because the details, sometimes they're anchoring, but they hold you back. So if you can bump something up to an abstraction layer and say, well, this really is like this, or this is moving in this direction, then you can figure out, how do I continue to move forward? And that was something that helped me a lot. But here are some of the questions you want to ask, like, well, where do we build and where do we run? Is it the same or is it fixed? Do I have to build and run in the same place? Where do we store data? Where do we store insights, new uses? And of course, everyone has compliance that they have to be mindful of. Securing apps and data, acquiring and keeping talent and new skills, and managing more and more data in different places. These are really, really key. And I am happy for anyone to, have a copy of the, because I think it will serve you well as you're working and things you need to think about. But that's not all, right? The apps are exploding. I mean, everywhere. And we need to redefine our entire infrastructure. And that's one of the areas that I spend a lot of time in with my board work. So, you know, Nutanix was the first one to come out to say infrastructure should be invisible. And so it has started with hyperconverged computing. So we're not, a room with 500 servers is now collapsed down to a room of a few servers, right? Because it's becoming virtualized. We have to do the same thing in the networking as well. And they're on their way, but they're a little slower. But they are moving forward and catching up. One of my other companies, which is called Jamf, is enterprise management for all Apple devices. Well, what's interesting is, having been in the corporate world for decades, I won't even say how many decades, Microsoft was, the king and ruled. But Apple not only conquered the consumer, but is more and more and more penetrating the walls of corporate America in a very rapid rate. Why? Because they had such an incredible way to visualize information, right? And speed to execution and easy to learn. And so they are growing in their capability. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to spend time with Jamf. They had just gone public and they were really now focused on the security space because Apple is one of their largest clients because Apple doesn't want to own enterprise management. Now, this is a slide that helps you understand just a little bit about what is going on right now with the markets and how is that affecting the things that we do. Everywhere there are budget constraints. And so it's slowing. We came off of a huge growth period and many years of rapid growth. We couldn't even hire enough people. And now I think every day you open the paper and you see, Salesforce, terminating 8,000 employees, et cetera. But at the same time, honestly, I will tell you, if you look at their filings, they're hiring too, but they're hiring in very specific targeted areas. AI is one of them, right? Virtualization of infrastructure is another. And so, it's kind of, I don't ever remember a period where what was overtly happening to corporate America in the external market was completely sort of counter to what they were doing inside, right? When there was a downturn, there was a downturn. And it had a huge ripple effect. But now we have a big downturn, but it's all about skills, right? And targeted skills. So then the supply chain is challenging. I think it's getting better, but the prices are not coming down, right? So we have inflation. It's good if you have money in the bank because you get some good interest there. Staffing is still a problem. I mean, our jobs reports, they're still for every open job rec, there's, at least 2 times capability that they want to hire people into that. So staffing is for the right skills, and you all seem to be in the right place to get those skills. So I think that learning how to interview properly for these openings is really going to be important. And if you could talk about a lot of things that are in this presentation today, I think they'll probably be pretty impressed that you understand what's on the other side of those walls, right? And we still are in very rapid innovation. Obviously, if you saw the news on ChatGPT, we are still in pretty scary times. How things become regulated, I don't know. That's one of the things I'd like to spend some of my time on going forward, is to help to put some guardrails around things. And I don't know if the government's going to actually do that, so we may have to do it in corporate America. And then security, which is endless, endless. Although I do believe at a certain point, you all will be growing up with the knowledge of how to create more secure environments. Right now, we have a very bifurcated workforce. We have people who don't understand, what this means and what are the implications. And then we have others that really do. So I have a couple of slides here because I thought I would give you some ideas about two different industries. One is financial services and the other is healthcare. Financial services always really focused on technology. It was one of the reasons why a mentor I had years ago said, you need to go down to Wall Street, because that's where they really invest in technology. And that's where I think you'll be able to do the most good. But what is interesting in a lot of the large financial institutions, they have created these monolithic portfolios of systems and people, and have not provided the right kind of incentives for the employees to progress and help the company move forward. Jamie Dimon and I go to a special group that he hosts of board directors. And, a very, very impressive guy. About 6 months ago, he literally came out and said, JP Morgan's moving everything to the cloud. Well, all his senior VPs were like, wait a minute, some of this stuff is definitely not cloud ready and we can't put it in the cloud. That person got fired, another one got fired, right? So they're all like, okay, guys, what do we do? And so they would call in a whole bunch of vendors and talk about, okay, we need to be able to show Jamie that we are making progress, but we have to educate him too in the practical issues that, may not meet his timeline. So interesting dilemma for, senior people to have to sit down with someone like Jamie. The good thing about him is that he throws a bold move out there, right? Because he knows that if he doesn't, it'll never get done. So one of my other private companies that I work on, it's called 10X Banking, was founded by the former CEO of Barclays. And he was very frustrated. He left Barclays because he said, I cannot move into countries I want to move into fast enough. I can't get my digital audience. Every time I go to IT, they tell me, oh, it's going to take 3 years to get this done. I have to move now. The neobanks are coming in, et cetera. So he went to Jamie and he said, look, I'm going to start a company and I'm going to make banking 10 times faster. And I'm going to enable you to move in and out of countries like that. And it's going to be completely born in the cloud. And so he did, but he created it in Europe. And we know that in Europe, the tech talent there is not as fast moving and sophisticated as the US, right? So he did it though. He built this platform and it allowed JP Morgan to move into the cloud in the UK. They had no presence in the UK. And if you pick up the paper now, they are the fastest growing retail bank in the UK, and then moving into Germany. And similarly in Asia, in Australia, and parts of Asia and South Africa and Israel now are moving all with, they'll have their own front end screen, but everything behind it. The foreign exchange, doing a mortgage, writing checks, having transaction services like foreign exchange and transferring money is all in AWS. And it is instantly deployable. You go on, you click, click, click. I need these functions. I have my logo and the bank is up and running. So, people are moving forward. At the same time, we still carry a lot of legacy baggage with us. So, but I think that a lot of the fintechs that are coming up now are also making the large institutions very concerned about the future of their enterprise. The healthcare industry, wow, did that change with COVID, right? I mean, telehealth now, before, anytime you were sick and you couldn't get out of the house or you couldn't get there, and you'd say, can't I just call the doctor? Can't I just, no, the doctor needs to touch you and feel you and see you. And, it was a big legal issue. Well, now telehealth is incredible. Turns out it's also very helpful and very profitable for the healthcare organizations to do so, right? Yeah, it needs to be secure, but there are a plethora of, for every type of medicine, like dermatology, there's an app now that has such incredible granularity that you can literally take a picture if you have a skin problem or acne, and the doctor can diagnose exactly, because of how good the resolution is, what you have and what you need to take. And that's it. You don't have to worry about going to the dermatologist. So I think the hospital of the future is going to be an exciting place. I have a good friend who is the CTO at Sloan, and they're doing some really amazing things. I'm also on the board of a company that does predictive medicine, all using the genome. So they can predict if you are going to go blind, if you're going to have corneal dystrophy, if you have projected to have a certain form of cancer, and the accuracy, and it's all about the amount and volume of data that they have access to be able to predict within 85 to 90% accuracy what we have. And if we know earlier, we can take the steps to help advance. So I see right now huge, where biotech was kind of always very exciting, but slow moving, it's really making some tremendous advances. So you have the beauty of having a core skill that you can apply to any industry. And look at me, I had pure tech, and I was on an airline board, I was on a healthcare board, on a financial institution. So if you can marry your passion about what you want to do or how you want to help this world, then you have incredible skills that can apply wherever it is. It's not like you're just focused on biotech or just focused on financial services, right? So that's pretty exciting. So these are my last couple points that I wanted to make. The thing I hear the most when I sit with CIOs, and I do a mentor program that has about 250 worldwide CIOs, and there often is, well, how do I get started, or how should I direct my team? What do we do? So I just wrote down a few things, and why this is important for you to think about, because you are going to be asking these kind of questions, right? So you want to look for partners or technology companies that span across this field. That was on a few of my other slides, right? And you want to be able to have conversations and potential partnerships with them so that they can help you model what your needs are and think about it. You want to build a framework. Again, I mentioned this earlier about where do I develop, where do I run apps, and through the life cycle. Maybe I develop and run until a certain point, and then I move it. And what are those metrics associated with? And you have to really begin to put that in place, because otherwise you'll have chaos. You'll be having people develop in different environments because because they like one or the other, or they know one versus the other in terms of the details of how to set up the environments, et cetera. And then you want to build multidiscipline teams, right? You want to, oh, did I skip? Analyze skill gap. Yeah, that's key. And if you are sitting there and you feel like, you know, we need to move in this area and I don't have this skill, well, I can tell you there's so much online education that, you know, you can start yourself, or you go to your manager and say, look, I see that we're going to need this skill. How about, you know, we talk to one of our partners or we have a class on this. And because you have to have these skills and they have to be multidiscipline. And you have to be able to work very, very collaboratively. I think you all do it today in your personal social lives, right? You're all collaborating in some form. And then you want to really keep reinforcing this last one, which is so important. Reduce the complexity of the platform engineering approach. Automate everything you can and try to make things self-service, consumable, and adaptable, especially the testing.
I have one.
Okay.
What happened to your friend, the cellist? Was it Yo-Yo Ma?
It wasn't Yo-Yo Ma. And I lost track of what happened with my friend, the cellist. However, I will tell you, when I joined the Juilliard board, which for me was like an incredible thing because I always wanted to go to Juilliard, but we couldn't afford it. Now we're going to make Juilliard tuition free. But their wooing day for me was that they took me up into Geffen Hall and said, oh, do you know Yo-Yo? I was like, Yo-Yo? Yeah. And it was Yo-Yo Ma who came over to greet me, and, you know, and also Lin-Manuel from Hamilton.
Wow.
So I was like, sign me up.
I do have a technical question. If
Yeah.
you want to know this. A couple of days ago in the newspaper, and I know this could have just been political babble, but they were saying, well, you know, these hyperscale cloud providers, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, that's a vulnerability risk. And I mean, I know, I see you added IBM and Oracle, but I mean, if you go to one of these companies and say, okay, Amazon, what happens if the power goes out, if there's a bad storm? I mean, do they tell you something that you're comfortable with?
Well, yeah, first of all, that is like the biggest fallacy ever, because the amount of people that they have managing their environment with such incredibly deep expertise, and I know many of them, you could never hire those people to manage or create your environment. So that's one. Those resources are tremendous. The other is, you sit down and they have all of their regions are interconnected. So they have immediate failover capability. And what you do as a savvy CTO is you sit there and say, show me the hops. Show me what happens if I have an outage, you know, in the Faroe Islands or in all of UK or all of Lower Manhattan. Where is the network where I am up and running instantaneously? And so, you know, their ability, look, everyone's going to have some kind of something at some point in time. If the mind can construct it, the mind can break it. But you are going to be leaps and bounds better than trying to hire these people and run on your own environment, because the cost is prohibitive. And that's also why multi-cloud is very important. Like, I would never put all my eggs in one basket, you know, and so the ability to shift and lift, if you have to.
One basket, would you say like AWS is one basket? Or, I mean, AWS is distributed though. I mean, I think they would say they're not one basket, right?
Right, but to you, it's seamless. You have no idea where your data is, right? And so you can literally invoke a shift and lift if you want to. In fact, that's one of the things Nutanix does, is runs on these other platforms, right, on all of them. So you can go in and monitor if my costs are going up in AWS because of the transaction processing. I can invoke a shift and lift over to Azure. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take a question online. Do you recommend specializing in cybersecurity of big data to deal with the oversaturation of the programming market?
I think it's a great idea to have an area that you start out in. And data is huge opportunity, so is security. And people in security, then if you migrate into another area, just think of the value that you're going to bring to that because you've already been steeped in a particular understanding of security or data management. Yeah. And eventually, you know, I do believe that a lot of programming is going to go by the wayside at a certain point, be less, right? You know, right now we need it. And we're going to need it for AI, but you're probably going to be much more automated.
Another question online. What's a good place to start learning multi-cloud and cloud computing?
I would go on to a few of the multi-cloud vendors. The websites are filled with white papers. Certainly, if you go onto the Nutanix website, you'll see there's white papers on all of this stuff. But IBM has it as well, Red Hat.
How do you get past the idea stage? Oftentimes young people, including myself, have ideas, but we don't know how to bring them to life.
Oh, such a great question. Find a more seasoned senior person to partner with, right? To help you think through, okay, how do I advance this to the next level? That, you know, the combination of multi-age and multi-experience teams are the most powerful because the ideation and what you're exposed to as a young person, the sky is the limit. But then how to manage it through the channels to make it happen is so helpful to have a more seasoned or experienced person to help guide you through that process.
Any other questions in person?
Anything about a career? Yeah.
It's not really about the career, but the part that you mentioned, am I loud? Not loud enough? The part you mentioned about like how the transactions are becoming more virtual, and the part that you mentioned how doctors insisted always you have to come, you have to see me, and this and that, and now we discovered that no, a picture could be enough. I just want to, you know, be the devil advocate here. The ethical part of it, you know, when you talk about all these transactions, how easy, how accessible, the control aspect of all of these transactions, that the ethical part, I don't want to say the legal, but the ethical part of it, how do you see that happening or panning out during all this expansions that's going on?
Well, I mean, I will say in areas like healthcare or financial services, I do still see regulation hoops that you have to go through to be able to bring things to market. So that's helpful. There's not enough though. But when you say ethical, you mean, are you talking about like cryptocurrency trading? I mean, honestly, I can tell you, I'm on the board of a big market maker and we are in crypto, right? So how many times did I reach out to my friends in the SEC way prior to FTX and say, guys, you need to regulate this environment. Spitzer, like, not Spitzer, what's the guy, Gary, the guy who's head of the SEC now, why can't he would like see, if you watch C-SPAN, people were telling him you need to regulate this, like make sure that you can't have commingled funds in the same bank account. You know, this is just basic. I think our government is so afraid of all these technologies that they can't even start to regulate them because they don't understand them. And that's really, really bad. One night I watched C-SPAN and there was literally a meeting about how the government was going to have to hire thousands of technology talent just over the next 3 to 5 years, just to try to figure out how they're going to manage this new world. It's really, it's a problem. Yeah. So we just have to keep pushing. Look, I always say, my husband teases me about all this stuff, but when cars first were created, there were no stop signs, no traffic lights. There were not, they were just dirt roads and cars, and lots of people got killed. So eventually, they figured out that we need a stop sign or we need a traffic light, and that will happen. That will happen here, but there will be sad and unfortunate casualties as a result of it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your-
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for sharing your journey as well. It's inspirational to our students. I just wanted to make a couple of comments before my official closing remarks with regards to your really inspirational talk you gave. A couple of data points in here I want to share as I was listening. So for those of you who follow what I post on LinkedIn, yesterday, actually, I posted something based on this study, based on Indeed.com postings. Currently, out of the top 10 jobs in the US, I think almost all of them, probably 80% of them are tech jobs. So what I had posted, the top three, I will just count the top three for you. Number one top job in the US right now is full stack developer. Number two is data engineer, and number three is cloud engineer. So very relevant to the discussion.
Lots of money, I bet.
Mean annual salary for a full stack developer, $129,000 and change. We'll skip the change here. So the other comment that, good question that was raised by someone remotely was, is it worthwhile to focus on cybersecurity? My comment is, since now almost every system that we design and we program is connected, security is not an afterthought anymore. It's not, oh, let's think about it. It's built in. I'll give you a very simple example, and I'll withhold names to protect the innocent. Last week, we launched a software platform for internal use within the College of Engineering. And when our computer science faculty kindly sent an email to me and the author, and he said, by the way, I use SQL injection and I hacked in as an admin and I have access to all of the database, so that's as simple as it is. So security is not, oh, let's think about it. You start writing the code with the understanding that, it is connected. So by definition, it's accessible to everyone. And third comment, I'll skip that in the interest of time, but I really appreciate Virginia for a great presentation that you gave us today. We had some a small gift as a token of appreciation. It is an 1855 Broadway. I wanted to present it to you here. So virtually, I'm presenting that gift to you. Thank you so much. For everybody who has joined us locally, physically here and remotely, thank you for participating in this event. My thanks again go to the colleagues who made this event happen, Dr. Rob DeFazio, Assistant Dean Jane Polizzi, and the College of Engineering staff, Ms. Jill Rogers and Ms. Sarah Hasasta. Please tune in for the next talk, as it will be advertised through the same channels you learned about this talk. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.